Everyone. We see if folks are streaming in. That's great. We do want to encourage you to please briefly tell us a little bit about yourself by filling out the Menti poll. We'll cover the results before we get started. There's a link in the chat to that poll as well. Thank you, Mari. And we'll get started momentarily. So again, for those of you who are just joining us, please scan the QR code or visit menti.com and enter the code you see listed there to share with us a little bit of information about you so we know more about our audience. And welcome. We're excited to get the conversation started momentarily. Those of you who are just now coming in, to please scan the QR code or go to menti.com and put in the code that you see listed there, just to give us a little bit of info about you so we know how to have our conversation today with the right folks in the room. Really appreciate you doing that. And I am going to go ahead and kick it off. So welcome, everyone. I am Emily Royal. I am a GovAI board member and senior IT manager for the city of San Antonio. I'm really lucky and honored to host today's conversation, which centers around the intersection of procurement and artificial intelligence. Today, we're going to talk about strategies for reducing complexity of procurement processes. We're going to look into how public agencies can collaborate and pool their resources more effectively for procurements, and also discuss how we can introduce responsible AI principles into contracting. So some really excited topics. I'm joined by four individuals that each represent a different side of that story, ranging from people who work in frontline procurement to those who are innovators in the space that are building best-in-class tools and resources for transforming government and launching procurement into the 21st and maybe even the 22nd century. So welcome to Mari, Kimberly, Ryan, and Colin, who are going to be the centerpiece of our conversation today. I want to set the stage a little bit. This is a follow-up to the start of a great discussion that we had at the GovAI Summit in San Jose last December. If you weren't there for that conversation, we touched on topics like the importance and value of building more collaborative infrastructure between folks who work in procurement and technologists, especially in the public sector. We talked a lot about opportunities and risks for AI to enhance the procurement process. And we also talked about, again, that theme of pooling our resources by establishing a really transparent collaboration layer at the local level. And one example of that we'll talk a little bit about is our AI contract hub. In my 6 years of public service as a technologist, and leading smart city initiatives and emerging tech teams, I've really come to appreciate the value of procurement. And that is one of the most powerful tools that governments can use to incentivize the vendor community to adopt ethical practices, and in this case, responsible AI. And if we live in a society that does vote with our dollar, then governments also should express their desire for transparent and safe and ethical technology by choosing to invest in companies and technologies that demonstrate those best practices. And that's something we're really going to talk about quite a bit today. In the absence of federal legislation, again, that burden comes back to cities, counties, and states to really set those terms and conditions, to really build a ethic around responsible AI and hopefully deliver better services that improve the quality of life for our residents and the services ultimately at the end of the day that they expect and depend on. One of the things that we're going to talk about today is the AI Contract Hub. Late last year, we launched the GovAI Contract Hub, which is where public agencies and solution providers alike can upload awarded contracts for AI systems, primarily so we can learn from each other and the different ways that we're structuring those contracts as the public sector, but also ultimately piggyback on successfully negotiated terms, which is an exciting resource that we're looking forward to continuing to build. This shared space could not have been achieved without the partnership of Pavilion, who are joining this call today and have really helped, build this platform alongside us. And it really is the first step towards effectively pooling those resources across public sector to achieve those better terms like we talked about. I feel strongly that this group and folks who want to join us can build best practices for AI procurement by public agencies and incentivize vendors to adopt responsible AI. And ultimately, let's negotiate better terms and pricing for our communities. This conversation is really just the beginning of that collaborative opportunity that we have. So with that, I'm going to turn back to the poll. I want to see if folks maybe responded to that real quick and see a little bit more about who's in the room. So it looks like we've got a wide gap between those who are procurement professionals. That's awesome. We have a lot of procurement folks in this call, which is excellent. And we have some suppliers as well. Awesome. Some folks who are working in local government and some folks from other industries. That's really great. Let's look at the next slide. All right, so interesting. A lot of folks who have not yet awarded AI contracts. This is excellent. We really want to start having this conversation early and so that we can kind of explore what the opportunities and risks are in this space. Some folks who are unsure and a handful who have already done it, who are leading innovators in the field, and folks who are currently working on it, just like the city of San Antonio. That's awesome. And I think this is our last one. What AI tools have you procured or sold? We got a big none. Again, anticipating, right, what's coming down the pipeline. So that's great. Lots of folks doing ChatGPT. That is not surprising. Some Perplexity, interesting. Copilot, certainly something that a lot of cities are exploring right now. Large language models, AI powered research, Otter AI, constituent relationships. Excellent. Very interesting. Great. Well, this is really helpful and really awesome. So with that, I am now going to just have an opportunity for our speakers to introduce themselves real quick. So what I'd really like to do is hear from each panelist, maybe in about 2 minutes or less. Tell us your name, your title, and why you believe procurement is an important field for you to be dedicating your effort and energy to. And I am going to start with Colin. Colin, go ahead and kick it off.
Thank you so much, Emily. Well, it's good to be with everyone today. I know good morning, good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're all in. Currently calling in from Boston, Massachusetts. I currently serve as an assistant director at the Harvard Kennedy School Government Performance Lab, where I oversee a virtual community called the Procurement Excellence Network, which is a virtual space that's all focused on empowering public procurement change agents like so many of you on this call across the country through supportive virtual events, cohorts of learning, actionable tools and templates, and peer connections. And it's through that work that our organization is incredibly excited about why procurement is so important. There's a reason that we've been so energized by the public procurement function and have worked to really transform public procurement across the country for the last 10 years. And it really starts with the fact that too often external folks don't view procurement as this core strategic function that it truly is. And so much of my work and the work of the Procurement Excellence Network is about evangelizing the importance of procurement and helping to elevate the status of the profession, something that, as you all know, impacts so much of the way that we as local governments spend money on countless core services for our residents, ranging from our streets to our parks, and really thinking strategically about how we move those dollars more effectively.
Fantastic. Thank you, Colin. And I'll turn it over to Kim. Kim.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Barnard. I'm the Principal Procurement Analyst for the State Bar of California. I previously worked for 6 years at the Golden Gate Bridge Highway Transportation District as the Principal Technology Buyer, serving the technology team there. Prior to that, I was at Department of Defense and the Marin Housing Authority. So a career of being a public servant and trying to figure out how to procure things. I also co-chair the Gov AI Coalition Cooperative Purchasing Committee with Emily, which has been extremely informative, exciting, and enriching for me as a procurement professional. Like I said, I've been in public service my whole life, and the reason that I think that procurement is such an important space to devote my energy to is because it's just simply so impactful, so important, and when it is not done well, the consequences can be incredibly bad for the public and for the people that we're here to serve. So when I was working with the technology team at the Golden Gate Bridge Highway Transportation District, I realized that every ounce of effort that I put into learning about technology, learning about technologists, and really pushing them and myself to collaborate and work together, the amplification of the quality of the procurement that we were doing skyrocketed. There was so much opportunity for us to work together, collaborate, and learn from one another. And it really got me hooked on working with technologists. And now I would not want to take a job where I didn't have the opportunity to do that. And, the appreciation from the technologists when you come to the table with them is really palpable. It's so impactful for them. So.
Collaboration sounds like something that's interesting to you, especially in the AI space. Please don't hesitate to maybe drop your interest in the chat. We can loop you into the Gov AI Cooperative Purchasing Committee that's definitely dealing with these issues. All right, and next let's talk to Mari. Mari, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Marielle Reed. I also go by Mari, occasionally by Mad Dog. You can ask me about my pirate days sometime later. But yeah, I come from a background working in technology. Started my career as an early employee with a startup that's since gone public in the edtech space, Coursera. And after doing that work, I like to joke that edtech was my sort of gateway drug to being interested in civic technology and government technology more broadly. I joined the city and county of San Francisco. And I did so because I wanted to understand this gap between technology and government service delivery and be part of hopefully improving collaboration across technology and government. And I got more than I bargained for. I think took a curve and became totally obsessed with public procurement. Because I got to see the results of when procurement goes well on businesses and residents firsthand when I was with the city and county of San Francisco. And I basically came to deeply believe and still believe that procurement is just this massive opportunity and so often an overlooked lever for improving how governments deliver public services and the way that we're able in government to engage a wide set of talent across the country working in businesses in solving and addressing some of those challenges as well. So I decided to combine the worlds of the technology startup experience that I had had and the public service experience that I had had and my obsession with procurement. And I'm now part of a proud public procurement and technology set of nerds, which includes this delightful panel here, as well as the 40 or so team members, which we have at Pavilion. So I went on to start Pavilion. You're going to hear a little bit more about what we do, but essentially we're a free platform for public servants to find, use, and share contracts and work with suppliers that have been awarded those contracts from peer public agencies across the country. And on the supplier side, we let suppliers that have been awarded those contracts basically grow their government sales at a lower cost, which is extremely meaningful for those businesses and especially in technology and newer and emerging categories. So yeah, that's my kind of how I fell in love with public procurement and why I started Pavilion story.
Awesome. Thank you, Mari. We're so lucky to have an innovator and entrepreneur such as yourself joining us in this journey and collaboration. Ryan, please introduce yourself to the group.
I think he might be a little frozen.
Oh no, he's frozen. Okay, well, for the moment, we will move on. But Ryan, please flag us down when you come back online, and you are good. Obviously, I'll take a moment to introduce Ryan as I know him well. He is a senior analyst in strategic procurement and contract management for the city of San Jose. So Ryan really has been on the front lines of quite a bit of procurement innovation, leading different types of cooperative contracts, helping San Jose be lead agency on some contracts for AI systems, and overall just generally advising and supporting contracts for AI within the city of San Jose. So once Ryan gets back online, we'll include him in the conversation. I want to start with just like an icebreaker for the group. I'd love for y'all to open it up. Anyone can respond to this and just talk to us a little bit about procurement innovation. You all have different lenses and different takes about what that means to you. I want to hear from each of you, what does procurement innovation, mean to you in your work? So maybe we'll start with Colin, because we know Colin definitely has a lot of procurement innovation ideas under his belt. So Colin, please take it away for us.
Sure. Yeah, this is such a great opening question. So my immediate mind goes to, there obviously are a lot of ways to define procurement innovation, but from our work, we really see it as a mindset shift where folks are taking on the status quo to really modernize the way that procurement operates in a particular jurisdiction, whether that's through technology, process changes, new policies or procedures, or even shifting roles. It's really all the above in terms of how you approach tackling pain points that are really impacting having your procurement processes be efficient, results-oriented, and strategic.
Awesome. So really thinking about process improvements to process and how to assist different public agencies with rethinking maybe some of those procurement workflows. Mari, Kim, thoughts on procurement innovation and what that means to y'all?
I can go. For me, it's also a mindset shift, but it's thinking about how to throw my deep inner procurement no and knee-jerk reaction out the window and retrain my brain to hear everything that I'm hearing from my customers and vendors and saying, let's see if we can make it work. Let's see if there's value in that. Let's see if we can do things in a different way. And so breaking down all those no's and questioning why I said no or wanted to say no or where that no is coming from, and then just moving on and looking and listening to what the technologists are trying to do and trying to find a way to support them in doing that, and bringing my expertise in where I can in areas that they don't know about and vice versa. Just that collaboration and really forming a team that is invested in the success of the procurement together is something that I've really enjoyed doing. And I think that in procurement, we have an opportunity to do that with technologists in a way that is unique because our technologists are good at things that a lot of our other customers are not. They're good project managers. They're good at writing requirements. They're good at understanding a problem set. So they're like the perfect customer if we'll let them be.
Yeah, awesome, Kim. Thanks for that. So, the spirit of collaboration, a shift in mindset about, the role that maybe procurement professionals play within their agencies. And I think that's actually a great segue to a real world use case with Ryan. Ryan, we're sorry that you dropped off momentarily. Other than fixing on doing a contract maybe to fix San Jose's internet, tell us a little bit about yourself. And the question that's on the table right now is procurement innovation, and I know you are heavily involved in that. So tell us a little bit about you and what procurement innovation means to you.
Sure. So I'm Ryan Maher. I'm a senior analyst with the city of San Jose, and basically I work directly on our on our RFPs for some of the more complex procurements that we do, especially those that deal with technology and AI these days. For me, I've always been excited about process improvements. Um, I think that I think that I think that improving government process, increase efficiency, is actually going to help even us internally in procurement kind of make a shift and move away, kind of what Colin was talking about earlier, from being an administrative role to becoming more strategic and even provide more assistance, more value to our public entities, and become a real partner and resource for them.
And on that, thank you, Ryan. And Mari, how about you? What does procurement innovation mean?
Yeah, I'll plus one everything that's already been said, I think, in terms of process improvements, mindset shift. And I will just add, I think for me, this is also about really leaning in and leveraging what makes public sector like special, the public sector special and different from the private sector, and kind of using that to our advantage. And I think we'll talk a little bit more about this, but in the technology space, it can be so challenging for public agencies to take risks and try something new. But public agencies are also uniquely positioned to be able to pool resources and do this together. So I think what we're looking at over the next couple of years, and I know GovAI Coalition is really paving the way here, is the ability for public agencies to basically pool risks and scale up what works much faster than in the past by leveraging technology and by leaning into what makes public agencies special, which is the ability to share and to explicitly collaborate. So I get really excited about this model where public agencies are able to solve their own challenges at a small scale, but then as soon as something works, leverage procurement and that new technology solution that they've taken a risk on to offer the thing that works to the wider ecosystem much more quickly. And I think that's a win-win, both for public agencies and the residents that they serve, and also for the companies that are trying to navigate this space historically with really long sales cycles, huge barriers to entry, who all of a sudden, once they go through the process once, get access to scale out what's really working at a higher speed than ever before.
Thanks, Mari. You bring up a really great point, which is the value of speed, right, in this space, especially when we deal with technology. There's emerging technologies. There are hype cycles. There's new technologies, and it seems like a new AI rollout every 5 minutes these days. So, to that point about speed and urgency, which I think, maybe a lot of procurement shops out there are feeling when they have technology teams that are starting to ask them, to begin to develop procurements, contracts, et cetera. For AI in particular, I want to talk a little bit about what are some of those urgent issues that procurement teams need to be thinking about right now to prepare themselves for that. And Colin, I really want to ask you, as kind of our leading expert, like what are some recommended steps that you think public agencies should be taking today to ready themselves for procurement for AI systems? And what's that low-hanging fruit that governments and public sector agencies should be thinking about right now?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Emily. And it's interesting. A couple months back, we, through the Procurement Excellence Network, hosted this session with about 20 chief procurement officers from across the country. And in that group, we started with a very similar poll that you all did today about who was starting to purchase these products, use them within their own procurement operations. And about 50% were in complete wait and see mode. They wanted to get more guidance from their legal teams or from IT before they moved forward, or they were nervous about the risk about really engaging with these products. But there was another 50% that were not only fully supporting user departments and starting to use these tools and procuring for these tools, but were experimenting themselves to really modernize their own procurement functions. And many of those early experiments and pilots relate to things that were already highlighted even in that word cloud that you showed before, things like chatbots to serve as the first line of questions to user departments and vendors on different rules and regulations, or helping with solicitation drafting where users would be able to essentially get a first draft of something and then make it ready for prime time by the end, or even reviewing reports that were coming in from the vendors during contract management processes. So there was a lot of really exciting experiments that this group that was starting to experiment was seeing and really learning from. And the interesting takeaway from all these procurement leaders is that they recognize that procurement teams need to be at the forefront of understanding these tools in their own processes. Because as you pointed out, the reality is residents, user departments, they're all going to start requesting using these tools, and procurement needs a seat at the table. Procurement needs to understand how these tools impact their own operations so they can advise purchasing decisions when user departments reach out to them. So we were really excited to see that so many procurement leaders were not just saying, we're going to wait and see what lawyers or folks in IT departments are telling them before they really get started. And the final takeaway really from these conversations is often there's this perception that you have to be a super sophisticated procurement shop with lots of resources, but we're starting to see a lot of smaller jurisdictions really take the leap by slowly tipping their toes and finding a couple of use cases to experiment with, and then building governance committees to learn from those experiences and debriefing about what they would change as they try to scale these pilots further.
Awesome. Yeah, very interesting point about like smaller scale cities that maybe have some more of that flexibility, that ability to do that. I'm kind of wondering from Ryan's perspective as our front lines person over here. really just thinking about, like Colin said, being stuck in wait and see mode. What are some of the barriers that you've encountered for procurement innovation, and how would you really recommend that public agencies mitigate some of those barriers? What can procurement shops do to try to work to reduce those barriers to being able to move quickly with urgency, and also with sophistication on some of these AI topics that are novel to their organizations?
Yeah, so one thing that I see is pretty common is that within procurement, and in our procurement departments, I see a lot of hesitation to actually start adopting and utilizing some of the tools that are already out there, the generative AI, chatbots, and things like that. I know there's a lot of, like Colin had mentioned, there's a lot of push from the leadership, but the day-to-day that the people that are on the ground, they either don't know what the implications are of using it. They aren't trained and ready to be able to use it. They don't know the best use cases for it. So first, the purchasing office needs to start overcoming their own hesitations, their own difficulties with the technology, in order for us to, push that as well. And I think another thing that will help is building excitement within your organization to begin using it. I mean, there's so many things that these technologies can do for us, and it's not just the chatbots that we're seeing come out. I mean, if you talk about analytic AIs and the predictive technologies that you can put in place in your organization to get ahead of the needs of the organization, they're super powerful. But even in just the day-to-day stuff, I've seen technologies that are coming out that helps with scope development, helps you identify and find different contracts that exist for you to leverage and piggyback. It can help with process improvements and even enhance your ability to provide internal and external customer support to both, your internal customers, vendors, and community members who might have questions about your entity's procurement processes. There's so much that it can do. I think that's also kind of a drawback. It's one of those things is you're just bombarded with all of these new things that are coming out and that are happening. Um, you know, my, I guess, big advice would be find the one thing that will have the most impact in your organization, and man, really dive into it. Because once you get that in place, it's gonna start a snowball effect where your organization adopts it much quicker. And another thing that I'm seeing, and I want to kind of throw out there too, is that I find a lot of procurement professionals are a bit nervous about their vendors utilizing and leveraging this technology when they're bidding on their solicitations, because they're saying, well, how can how can I confirm that the information that they're putting in there isn't hallucination from an AI or something to that effect. There are new issues that have come, from the AI, but a lot of old solutions exist that can still tackle them. And things like, our due diligence processes um, actually do already tackle these issues. So learn how to adapt your old processes into the future too.
Just as a very brief follow-up to that, you mentioned, recommended that folks choose a use case that has the biggest impact to their shop or their organization. How did they decide what that could be? What's your thought on how to pick?
Find out what your customer pain points are, right? What's slowing down your procurements? What is the thing that's taken so much time to go from the identified need to the solicitation hitting the street, right? For us, that has always been the scope development piece. If you find that there's a huge need on and around your customers understanding the procurement process, maybe you can find a chatbot that you can even train on what your policies are so that they can talk with it. But it's what's going to help our customer is going to help us at the end of the day. The quicker we can get in step and in line with our customers, the faster we can get procurements out the door. And I mean, if we can also, and this has been something that I've been passionate about my whole life, is just making my job easier. Just being frank, because I love my paycheck. I don't like the work so much, is what I always say. So if I can do less work or make my job easier, I'm all for that. And these technologies do that more than anything else I've ever seen.
Okay, interesting. So I want to shift the conversation a little bit from leveraging AI to improve procurement itself to tools and solutions to support the purchase of AI systems on behalf of, a department or a technology team for an organization. One thing that I know, obviously, because it's in the title, the Cooperative Purchasing Committee at GovAI is really passionate and interested in is cooperative purchasing as a tool and a resource. Mari, can you talk to us a little bit about what cooperative purchasing is and why this is particularly of relevance for technology as opposed to maybe other types of commodity?
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we talked a little bit before about, hey, the public sector is special. So unlike the private sector, there are pretty unique incentives to collaborate among public agencies and not have to reinvent the wheel for the sake of efficiency and delivering taxpayer value and impact. But also, unlike the private sector, buying in the public sector is regulated. And these regulations essentially require that public agencies buy from suppliers who've been awarded a contract through a competitive solicitation or competitive process. So that's the RFP process typically is the default way to satisfy that requirement, where the agency says, hey, I have this requirement to buy from a supplier who's been awarded a contract through a competitive process. I'll default to making the contract myself. And that's a pretty resource intensive process for both sides. So the RFP or bid process often takes anywhere from 4 to 24 or more months. And there was actually a study that recently came out that quantified the time on the staff side that public agencies invest in creating that new contract and running a new process. Orange County in Southern California actually led the way. They measured that it takes $86,000 in staff time to create a new RFP and contract that results. And there was a benchmarking study, I can drop the link in the chat, from NCPP that recently came out across 40 or so agencies that quantified the cost of staff time. And it was about $17,000 just for straight up salaries, not the fully loaded cost, to run that new contracting process. So it's expensive, it's time consuming, and it's not always, therefore, the best mechanism. So the alternative is to use a contract that some other public agency has already created. So again, high level requirement to buy from a supplier, awarded a contract by a public agency, but cooperative procurement basically says, hey, there's an opportunity for entities to work together, either upfront to go in on a process, that's called a joint solicitation, or to actually share contracts after the fact. So basically to piggyback or leverage a contracting process that some other public agency has already created. And again, there are big benefits here. The first I already talked about in terms of saving administrative time. And when it comes to technology, it's not just the cost of time savings where there's a benefit, right? Of like, hey, we're going to save the administrative costs of going through a new procurement. Speed matters so much in the tech ecosystem because unfortunately, oftentimes the speed of procurement means we as public servants are trapped only getting legacy technology, right? It's like, oh, something's new, it's great. But if it's going to take us years to actually purchase that technology, then we all but guarantee we're only getting technology that's outdated in the public sector. So cooperative procurement, leveraging a contract and a contracting process that's already been done is really important and interesting in the tech space in particular, not just for the administrative cost savings, but for the speed of adoption that it offers. So essentially, if one agency has de-risked a new technology offering, they've been through a contracting process to get the latest technology and to work with the new supplier, then all of a sudden other public agencies have the opportunity to go through that process as well. There are a couple other benefits. One is direct cost savings from pooling purchasing power. So when entities are able to go in on a solicitation together and work together to develop a contract, they can oftentimes achieve a lower price on volume and better terms potentially as well. And again, I think there's advantages when it comes to technology and trying new solutions to being able to kind of aggregate or pool risk as well. So having many agencies testing new solutions and then being able to scale up what works well because that contracting infrastructure is already in place is awesome. Those are the benefits on the public agency side, especially when it comes to technology. There are clear advantages on the supplier side as well. And again, I think those come down to the cost savings in terms of the administrative costs of submitting and responding to RFPs. So NIGP did a study where they asked suppliers how much it costs just to respond to a solicitation, which they might not even win, by the way. And they responded that it's between $6,000 and $36,000 just in staff time to respond to a solicitation. So that's a heavy burden and can create barriers to who will even play. When you're able to kind of change the calculation for suppliers and say, hey, yeah, go through that first solicitation process, but instead of every single time you want to sell to a public agency, having to go through that new process, you're going to be able to sell much more quickly. That increases the attractiveness of doing business in the public sector for the supplier ecosystem and makes it more appealing to actually serve our space as well. So that's another advantage. Again, I think just really passionate and excited about changing that cost benefit calculation on the supplier side to recruit more and different kinds of technology talent into serving the public sector ecosystem. So that's, again, high level benefits on both sides, certainly not a silver bullet, but really awesome to be able to have access to sharing in the public sector. And there are benefits in terms of direct cost savings and time to acquire and time to buy that are especially relevant for technology.
Just like an example to reinforce your point, because I think they're all really great points, especially around the value of pooling resources, if you will, to achieve better T's and C's. So for San Antonio, I run a shop that tests emerging technologies. We have a lot of AI in our portfolio. And often, we're in the business of asking vendors to give us some basic performance metrics about their AI systems. We're looking for things like accuracy. We want scores for, different types of algorithmic bias. Like, we're looking for some of that data so that we can understand, how to evaluate that system and look under the hood. And often when we go, to negotiate in a procurement to request that kind of transparency from a vendor, they'll say, well, look, we can walk away from this contract because we're going to sell to hundreds of agencies in the United States. We don't really have to adopt, the city of San Antonio's T's and C's terms and conditions. That's the case for liability. It's a case for a lot of these other, terms that we try to introduce in our contracts. So I do see value and opportunity there in being able to say, well, hey, maybe San Antonio is a lead agency and we've got 50 agencies on this contract. That might incentivize you as a supplier to, be open to sharing some of those KPIs and metrics with us about these systems so we can make sure they, one, work, and then two, are providing the best service possible to our residents, because we do know when it comes to AI, there are a lot of studies out there that are showing that AI technologies, can introduce bias in decision making. They're not always right. There's hallucinations. We want to know that rate so we can really set the right risk appetite for our organization and for our community and be held accountable to it. So awesome points. I want to encourage folks. There's so much chatter in the chat, which is great. Please add questions. We'll have a little bit of time for Q&A at the end of this. So kind of in the same vein, around solutions and, ways to accelerate our ability to share knowledge, to build more effective procurements. I want to turn it over to Kim to talk to us a little bit about the AI Contract Hub. This has been a labor of love for some of the panelists on this call for the last 6 to 8 months or so. Can you tell us a little bit about what that hub is, what it's for, how people can use it?
Yes, sure. So when Emily and I we have this working style of just kind of talking. There's lots of text messaging, big ideas come up, and then we start riffing. So it's been really fun to do that with a technologist because that's what I'm into. So what I don't bring to the table in this conversation is AI expertise. So I felt a little silly really in the beginning, being asked to co-chair this committee with Emily. I was honored, but wasn't really sure that I was up to the task because I'm I don't have a lot of experience procuring AI. The Golden Gate Bridge wasn't too interested when I was there in procuring AI. But what I am an expert in is how to solve procurement problems and how to leverage technology to do things better and how to work with technologists. So with that hat on, when I was talking with Emily and we were trying to figure out strategically what we could build that would be impactful, kind of with the idea we need more technologists and procurement folks to join us at the table. So what was our hook going to be? And so thinking from that perspective, what tool could we create or what could we on that was going to get procurement folks at the table and creating a contract hub where, in procurement, we know that imitation or research or thievery is the biggest form of flattery. The thought of bringing together all of the documents that procurement folks could use to conduct market research, that procurement folks and technologists could use to see how was this procured before? Are there things that I need to add to my scope to really round it out and make sure that we're hitting all the things that we should? And the best form of flattery is just using the contract, right? So Pavilion is a tool that from the first time I heard about it and discovered it, it's been something that I use religiously. No matter what requirement I have, I'm going to go check out Pavilion and see what's out there. And so thinking about, how cool Mari and her team are and how they want to help, I threw it out there to Emily and I said, hey, I think I have some people that we need to talk to. So we wanted to put together the Gov AI Contract Hub to be a resource, to make procurement easier for everyone, to really bring folks together and also have people get skin in the game too, right? Because if we don't have people contributing these contracts, we don't have anything to offer. And so the response has been great. And so now I think that we'd like to kind of give you guys a snapshot so that if you aren't already using that hub or pavilion, you know what will be available to you. Okay, so when you come onto the Gov AI Coalition Contract Hub, this is what you'll see. We've got a few contracts listed that are there, but what you can do is you can go ahead and type in what it is you're looking for and see if there's any hits. So for facility reservation, a few different things come up here. And so you can scroll through them. You can see everything that really hits, and Pavilion has a pretty wide reaching search capability. So occasionally something will be in there that doesn't fit the mark, but most of the time they're going to be pretty spot on. So you can click in there, you can get a quick overview of the contract and the supplier, and then you'll see that there's scope, supplier, products, and documents that are associated with the contract. You can click into them and you can scroll through all the different documents and try and find the information that you're looking for. You can download those documents, you can share them. When I'm working on a project, what I like to do in Pavilion is create a little project and start saving relevant contracts into there so I don't have to go and find them. You can add folks in to your group. If you're working with a technologist, I make sure all of my technologists always have access to Pavilion so they can look in there as well and collaborate. Pavilion also has a cool feature where if you request a quote, and sometimes we know it's really hard to get a hold of these suppliers. I've actually been on a supplier's website before where I can't figure out how to get a hold of them, and I don't really feel like dealing with the stupid form they want me to fill out. So I'll just go back and search for that supplier in Pavilion, and usually I'll have some good contact information so I can just pick up the phone or shoot an email. So that's and Pavilion will follow up as well if you want them to kind of poke the vendor if they haven't responded to you. So we would love if you have, I know we only have 4 people that have an AI contract. And so we're interested in hosting contracts that have shareable language. That's like our first priority. But also if you have contracts that don't have shareable language, we'd still like to add them to the repository for GovAI, specifically for our hub, so that they can be used for research as well by our members. And we want to build this into something that's going to be more impactful, and that's something that we're going to be working on over the next year to, we would love to be able to get lessons learned on some of these contracts, to be able to provide additional information through the GovAI Cooperative Purchasing Committee, and also to grow our membership, because we found the more people we have at the table, it doesn't, you don't have to do anything other than show up. You can do more if you want. We'd love that. But if you just want to show up and participate in the conversation and hear what other people are working on, we've had some amazing working sessions where we're talking about um, problems that people are facing. And then people start jumping in and saying, hey, I did an RFP for this last year. These were the problems that we encountered. This is how I would do it moving forward. And so building out that community has been amazing. So if you have contracts that you want to add to the hub, you can email them. Our email's right here. And I think you will find checking out the hub is really rewarding and could be great, and something that if you're a procurement person, you should share with your technologist as well.
We have a motto in the GovAI Coalition, which is by government for government, and this has definitely been a very much a grassroots effort to create this resource. As it is imagined by procurement folks and government practitioners to be a service, right, to our community. But I do want to hear, Colin, a little bit of your perspective, and maybe you can take the last 2 minutes before we enter into a little bit of Q&A. But, Colin, can you tell us a little bit about why a model like this, either cooperative purchasing or, a contract hub such as this, is good for suppliers too? Like, where do suppliers fit into this equation? Why would they be incentivized to participate in a resource like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think other panelists shared about the powers and trade-offs of cooperative purchasing and even this tool itself. I'll just say in recent conversations that we've been having with the vendor community, there is something really powerful about them knowing that there is a much broader audience that they can start to build their products and services for. I know often vendors, especially in the technology space, are creating products for customers that they view as the first movers. Many of the folks who are on this panel, like the city of San Antonio, the city of San Jose, they're often designing their products knowing that there's certain governments that are more likely to pilot with them or who have the capacity to take on these types of contracts. So as there's more exposure through cooperative purchasing or through these search functionality tools, it does mean that technology vendors themselves are building a much broader set of products and services that will reach a much broader range of governments across the country, a much broader range of geographies and size of localities. So it's a really exciting moment that as more vendors are engaging in these spaces, they also see that they don't need to just build these products for very particular audiences.
Awesome. I want to ask maybe one more question of just the entire group and flag that we've gotten like only halfway through our planned conversation. So we might have to have a follow-up to the follow-up. But I want to ask y'all, one more question, and folks who are listening, please think of your questions and drop them in the chat so we have a chance to hear from you and get some Q&A going. I'd like to just think a little bit about the T's and C's side of things, the evaluation criteria. This is really kind of the last item that we plan to talk about, which we really didn't get into. But when we look at procurement and, eval criteria, terms and conditions, the whole, like all of the moving pieces of a procurement process, where do you see opportunities or levers to incentivize more responsible AI, to unpack some of those issues around transparency and bias that kind of come along with the territory of using AI systems? Just open thoughts from any of you who want to talk a little bit about the opportunities that you see in the procurement process being a lever to introduce positive change in the industry.
I can say that one thing I think is huge is the ability to do joint solicitations. As you know, kind of going back a little bit, the ability to leverage economies of scale, which is kind of a fancy word to say lower prices, lower administrative costs, kind of what going back to what Mari was saying, right? About how much it costs us to get a solicitation out, um, attracting more qualified bidders. But I think the most impactful thing is it increases our negotiating power with the vendors. And if we then can use that to shift more of the risk, especially when it comes to emerging technologies, the shifting the risk over to the vendor side is much more valuable to us than lower prices when it comes to an emerging technology. Um, and if I can do a little bit of shameless self-promotion here, local, not only our national, cooperatives like the AI Gov Coalition, but in San Jose, we're getting started up the Bay Area Procurement Alliance as a local one to leverage economies of scale of things that, are even outside of AI and technology. It is so valuable, so impactful, and I think the more we work together, the more we succeed together. So.
Awesome. Other thoughts from the group before we move into Q&A?
Let me jump in with one other quick comment to build on Ryan's insights. So in addition to all the tools that folks have shared, I also want to elevate in the chat, Dr. Waters had shared a couple of different additional resources that are really helpful just to think about trade-offs around risk. The other piece that we're always thinking about is at the end of the day, the basics still matter. Doing well-run procurements, well-run contract management, that is still the best risk mitigation to make sure that you are not getting into trouble with these different aspects of what these emerging technologies create. So on solicitation processes, whether you're using cooperative contract or doing standalone RFPs or bids, it's still about finding that balance of, as a government, communicating effectively to the vendor community your needs, but still understanding through market research, through having a relatively open-ended solicitation that so you can get the expertise from the vendor community to ultimately find vendors who are the right fit for your jurisdiction. So that process still needs to run effectively, no matter how detailed your specifications or solicitations are. And then in terms of contract management, these tools are certainly very helpful to make sure that vendors are being held to a certain standard. But at the end of the day, prescriptive requirements are not going to fully protect any government. It's still about, are you having structures in place to make sure that you're constantly monitoring and managing these vendors in a partnership mindset? So are you having effective kickoff meetings? As Emily brought up, do you have performance metrics that you're constantly checking in on? What are the ways that you're actually working with that vendor to make sure that you're achieving your goals?
Yes. But yeah, really appreciate that. All right, let's get into a little bit of Q&A here in our last couple of minutes. One that I have from Kiri up in the chat and upvoted by Melissa is, what can we do as individual team members to encourage the embrace of AI? So if you're in a procurement shop and you think AI is important to work with, how can you build that culture within your organization?
Personally, I think nothing drives adoption quite like excitement. If you can build excitement within your team, they're going to naturally want to adopt that new technology, right? Talk about some successes you had, talk about what gets you excited, and that is as contagious as a cold. So, go out there and talk about what you're doing with your team and share what you're excited about.
I've had success in talking about little silly uses of AI that are impactful just on the annoying parts of procurement work. I think the first time I really elicited excitement from my teammates was telling them that when I was scheduling interviews, it used to take me a half hour to put together my interview schedule for, the time blocking and all of that. But then I decided to ask an AI tool, say, I need to do 6 interviews. These are my hours. I want 15-minute breaks. And it just spits it out for you. So taking a half-hour task of reworking everything and moving it around, and then just having chat GPT or whatever your tool of choice is do it for you. Those are the little things that you can start, for people who are very averse to the use of AI, just kind of say, hey, like it really can make your life easier, and then start to build on those skills and start to present more use cases and suggest, hey, why don't you, take out all the identifying information of that scope, plug it in to a tool and ask it if it was a vendor, if it would have any additional questions that aren't answered by that scope of work. So putting that sort of information, not asking it to create a scope for you necessarily, but just saying, if you were a vendor, would you have questions about this? And then figuring out, how that can benefit your team and showing folks how that would look. So
Super interesting example. Kind of along similar lines, a question from Jennifer in the chat. How can we use AI to provide daily marketing analysis on goods and services like benchmark pricing and assure we're getting the reasonably priced goods? Thoughts on?
that's a really good question that I don't have an answer to. I don't know, Ryan, if you have any ideas about that.
I can share a little, Ryan, if you need a minute, otherwise.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, I think there's some really interesting applications that are emerging right now. And I think what's needed or exciting for the technologists who have all of these technologies and awareness of what the technology can do is more and deeper understanding of the pain points on the procurement side. So I know this is something that Pavilion is working on with a small number of agencies, and it's come up, for instance, like, hey, there is publicly available pricing data around purchasing that has been hard to access and hard to organize historically, and very expensive to access and organize. And with these new technologies, the costs to actually make that data much more useful are coming down dramatically. And the speed at which those technologies are available is picking up. So I guess I would say, I think coming from the kind of startup side, but also being steeped in the public agency perspective, there is so much opportunity out there to connect what are the deep pain points from the practitioner side in public service with interest and excitement around the technology that is becoming available, but there's a disconnect. So figuring out, I think, how to open up and ask about, like, hey, we have this pain, and not be overly prescriptive about how to solve it, but just make sure that that pain is surfaced really well, is going to be even more essential as we continue to improve how we procure technology and work with technologists who have that expertise, but lack oftentimes the context about what the problem is on the public agency side.
I'm sad to say that this is just about the end of our time together. We got through a little more than half of what we planned, but it's been such an excellent conversation. Clearly, there are a lot of issues to tackle, both in terms of procurement workflow, in terms of, transparency and sort of the content of that workflow, and building, successful solicitations in the AI space, to using AI to improve the workflow. There's a lot of transformation that's happening right now. So I want to extend thanks to each of you for doing the work that you do, for exploring new territory and sharing about your experiences. Again, just a reminder, there's opportunities for folks on the call to participate. You can visit the contract hub, upload a contract if you've got one executed for your agency. You can join the GovAI Coalition as a member and participate in the Cooperative Purchasing Committee. And you can continue to stay updated with this group as we have follow-up discussions on these themes, and just share with us your perspectives as we move forward. So thanks everybody for joining. Appreciate all of your time and effort and attention on this issue. We look forward to continuing the conversation and hopefully collaboration with everybody who's participated today. Thank you all.